Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Career Retrospectives, right here on the Super Review Show. I am joined by my two co-hosts and good friends, Kyle and Mike. What's going on, gentlemen?
Yo, what's up?
What's
Excited to do our first request.
Yes, that is true. So for those of you who are wondering what the hell we're doing tonight was a request by none other than Kyle's brother. We're going to be talking tonight about Quadeca's I didn't mean to haunt you.
Nice.
JT, you got some major connection problems going on.
Yeah, JT, while you're over there lagging, I'm gonna say happy Thanksgiving there, everybody.
I was gonna say I didn't mean to haunt you. That was my mistake. Right into it. Oh, hold on.
I was say, should we go around the room and say what we're thankful for? Because I'm thankful that JT's connection came back. Definitely.
I'm so sorry, everyone. I probably just froze beyond belief.
Oh yeah.
Oh no! See, we're already after a terrible. Oh no! I knew it. It was bound to happen at some point.
Hey, you know what? It happens to the best of us. By best of us, I mean mostly JT, but still, that's okay. All right.
Thank you. Deeply appreciated, Mike. No worries. We're off to a fantastic, somewhat good start tonight. Anyways, but Qudeca. So I'm actually, I'm gonna let Kyle go first because it was his brother that asked us to review this and talk about this. I'm gonna let Kyle go into this first because I want to hear it, different perspectives and stuff like that too. So, but since it was Kyle's brother, I'd like to let him go first, talking about Quadeca's latest release. I didn't mean to haunt you. What do you got?
Yeah, so Qudeca is someone that I've never been into. My brother is constantly telling me to check out certain songs by him, specifically his last record before this one. I didn't enjoy it at all. So he told me this one was even better. You know what? I agree with him on that. I think it is better than the last one. I do have my issues with this record, quite a few of them, but I think I was pretty fair with this one, and I'll get into that with specific songs later. But this was not as bad as I was expecting it to be going into it, and hearing certain songs before the whole thing ended up not being as bad as I anticipated.
Fair enough. Mike, what about you? What's your take on the latest album by Quadeca?
Well, yeah, I'm in the same boat as Kyle. I never heard of Qudeca, and I mean, I follow Anthony Fantano, his review channel, and I tend to kind of, I'm brought up to speed in a lot of ways by some of the new records being released. Now, what the kids are listening to these days, vibing out with their boys, drinking Mountain Dew in the back of a Honda Civic. But anyway, yeah, like I pretty much don't keep up to date with this stuff. So, and kind of like Kyle brought it up, I was like, yeah, sweet, like I'll check it out. And it's an interesting album, and it's got a lot of things going on at once. And it definitely I didn't expect to listen to a release that sounded like this by a new artist generally. I was expecting a lot more of a different style thing. So yeah, it's definitely got an interesting appeal to it, I'll get more into it when we do the actual breakdown.
Yeah, and I'm truthfully, I'm pretty much in the same boat here. I had never even heard of this artist until Kyle's brother was like, "Hey, let's get." He's like, "Hey, can you guys review this? Let's talk about this." And we said, "Sure, we'll give it a shot." And yeah, I mean, I haven't listened to any of his albums, prior to this. So going into it, I'm like, all right, well, let me open-minded, give it a shot, subjectively talking about it. There were things I enjoyed. There was some things that I didn't enjoy, but we'll get into that as time goes on throughout this discussion for this album. Yeah, let's jump over to the track listing for a second. I will list off a bunch of them right here. There are a total of 11 songs on this record. Number 1 is Sorry for Dying, Tell Me a Joke, Don't Mind Me, Picking Up Hands, Born Yesterday, The Memories We Lost in Translation, House Settling, Knots, Fantasy World, Fractions of Infinity, and I'm going to butcher this beyond belief, Cassini's Division. I want to say that's how you say it. Forgive me, everyone. I'm looking at the track list and I'm like, wait, what? Who would like to go first for their standout tracks? Any takers at all?
I'll take it.
Sure.
I'll take it from here. So I'm going to start with the ones that were, you know what? I'm going to start with the ones I thought were not great. I'm going to do it this way today. So this record has a lot of tracks that are not my style at all. It's a very like shoegaze, indie, and artsy inspired album. It's very artistic. I'm personally not generally into that for the most part. I could see someone that is into that style enjoying this record quite a bit, which Mike mentioned Fantano earlier. He gave it a pretty decent score for his reviews. I think he gave it a 7. If you like that stuff, I would tend to agree with this. But for me, there's a lot of tracks on here that suffer from being way too long for how they needed to be, to the point where they just drag and drag. Particularly songs like Don't Mind Me. Just towards the end of that, it starts off okay, has some cool parts to it. He has a good flow when he's doing the rap sections, but then towards the end it just kind of goes and drags and goes. There's a lot of like mid songs like that. There's the generic interlude of The Memories We Lost in Translation, nothing special there. Then we get to the ones that are really bad in my opinion. Fractions of Infinity, featuring the Sunday Service Choir. God, it's just a bunch of spacey ambient noises that it just sounds too busy. It's not for me. Again, if you like that, you'll probably really like that track. But the one, Born Yesterday, terrible, way too repetitive to be a 6-minute song. Ended up feeling like a chore to get through. But the one that really got me, the song Picking Up Hands. I hated this track. There it is. There it is. The vocals are horrendous. I can't stand that out of tune, trippy guitar and vocal effects on this thing. And again, way too long. 5 minutes for this. This could have been easily a 2.5, 3-minute song, but it's not. With all that said, I'm going to get into the songs I actually did enjoy. Because surprisingly, which surprised me, there was about 4 of them. Sorry for Dying, I actually enjoyed quite a bit. It sounds really cool. It's a great way to start the record. It reminds me of actually kind of reminiscent of some of Kanye's work, particularly in the later stages of his career, before recent news headlines. Has a great beat to it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Lyrically, I think it's fantastic. Then the song that follows it, actually, Tell Me a Joke. Again, lyrically, really enjoy it. I enjoy the creepy feel that it has to it. I think it works to its advantage. The one thing on that song, again, drags a bit too long. But then we get to the 2 tracks I actually really, really loved. And that shocked me. The first of them being Knots. I was very shocked by the new metal / industrial vibes that they had going on here. That I thought was really cool, very reminiscent of 9 Inch Nails, maybe a little bit of Korn thrown in, some of their more experimental work. Coolest song on the record, definitely the most unique out of all of them. The only thing I think would have made it slightly better would be some heavy guitars thrown in there, or like some drums. I could see parts where it would build and then it would benefit from going into that, but it doesn't. But still, great song. And then my top track from this record, Fantasy World, 10 out of 10. Fantasy World was incredible. It reminded me of something that would have been on Linkin Park's 1,000 Suns, which is my unpopular opinion. I love that record too. It's lyrically very moving. It does get a bit noisy and jumbled at parts toward the end, but it really, despite being the second longest song on here, is one of the few songs that doesn't feel its length. it's over 7 minutes long, and it's one of the only songs that I didn't feel like it was a chore to get through. So, with all that said, I think that the record, from a lyrical and storytelling aspect, excellent. Sonically, not my cup of tea, but I was blown away by the lyrics. I think the story is great. The story, like a ghost conveying the loneliness and feelings of loneliness and death, things like that. It's great. I think it gets the message across. Awesome. Mike, me and you said this before the stream started. Album cover is great. Really great. Artistically, it's very well done. If this is a style that you like, you're probably really going to like this record. Outside of the songs I mentioned, not so much for me. Ends on kind of a bad note, in my opinion. Cassini's Division, just 8 minutes of poetry and ambient noise. God, I get fitting ending, I guess, but it was a struggle to get through that one. It was so hard for me to just not call it halfway through that song. But yeah, so that's my thoughts on it. Ended up shocking me that I enjoyed as much of it as I did. Even me taking 4 tracks away from a Quadeca record is more than I anticipated.
Mike, you want me to go or you want to go next?
You go. Yeah, actually, that'll be refreshing.
All right. There we go. I wasn't sure. Got you there. So as we said from the top of the show, I have never heard of this artist. I mean, it's not my wheelhouse per se, but I will say I do agree with Kyle. There's at least 2 or 3 good tracks on there. And I actually tend to agree with Kyle a lot. And he said it perfectly, truthfully. If this is your style of sound of indie, I'm not an indie guy either, truthfully. I mean, I'm not an indie guy much at all. I mean, I know saying that to some people might be considered like a sin for some people. Like, why? How could you say such a? It's not for me. It's just my thing. But if you're into that kind of stuff, this is something that I think you could actually turn on and enjoy. You could put it on Spotify or wherever you get your music and say, hey, this is Quadeca's I Didn't Mean to Haunt You. This is something that I could enjoy. I agree with you a lot on that, actually. My standout tracks, I would have to say, actually are there's only 3, believe it or not, and it's only the first track, because there was no title track, so I had to pick something else besides the title track here. Because for those of you who listened to us for a long time, I'm a title track sucker, but there's no title tracks on here. That's okay. But so I mean, my top 3, I would have to say, actually would be Sorry for Dying, Knots, and believe it or not, Fractions of Infinity. Truthfully, I don't know what it is. Like for me, I'm listening to it and I'm going through it. I'm like, and then when a song stands out to me, it's when it really connects with me. It really hits me in a certain way. Like, oh, I'm listening to this. It's like it's more than just a song. It takes you to another place, and I kind of got that vibe from that a little bit. But outside of the and to Kyle's point as well, not the what is the I forget what band you. Oh no, you said 9 Inch Nails. I really enjoy 9 Inch Nails a lot. There was something about that track that did remind me of a 9 Inch Nails, of an industrial rock vibe, like a Linkin Park. And you're right, that actually was a highlight for me of like the sound wise. I agree with you on that. But other than that, like I said, Sorry for Dying, Knots, and Fractions of Infinity, those are my standout tracks for me personally. I do agree with you though. There are some songs here that are just, I mean, any song can have any length, but the fact that some of these songs are 6 minutes or 7 minutes and the last one is 8 minutes, it's a bit of a struggle for me sometimes. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some songs that I love, like I can go off on forever and ever, like Free Bird, that's 8 minutes or 9 minutes long, or even like certain other songs by other artists that are longer than 5 minutes long, like Bad Out of Hell. I love Bad Out of Hell. That album, all the songs are over like 5 minutes each, which is I think it's a blessing. But it works for that case. And just the fact that some of these songs were so long really brought it down for me quite a bit. That's one of the complaints I have about it, is that it was just, a lot of the songs were just so long. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you could have a 5-minute song, you could have a 2-minute song, you could have a 20-minute song. It doesn't matter. But if it doesn't grab your listener, it might not work for that person. And for me, it didn't. For some of the songs like Fantasy World And Cassini's Division just did not work for me in that aspect, because they were just like over 6 minutes, over 7 minutes, and the last one was 8 minutes long. It was a little much for me, but that's just me personally. But yeah, like I said, my standout tracks are Sorry for Dying Knots and Fractions of Infinity. Mike, are you ready to go?
I'm ready.
All right, talk to me. What do you got?
All right. So first of all, I'm going to start off with my cons and my pros. We'll just go start off there. Cons are the vocals. I feel the vocals are a major problem on this album. They really, and the problem with them is that the music has that opportunity to be so much better if it just had a voice in there really emphasizing the melodies that are kind of so distant in the background that it's almost so hard to pick them out of the muddy kind of like everything going on, in a lot of ways. It's like, and I get it, like it's an experimental progressive trap beat fusion, I don't know, whatever you want to call this thing, like it's, and in a lot of ways I think that's the problem, is it's aware of itself too much. Like it's aware that it's a progressive album. It's aware that it's trying to be experimental, and it's got to push the limits of, like, all of a sudden the beat will be normal sounding, and then they'll turn the volume up for no reason to a point where it's distorted on purpose, where the beat is just like coming in and it's just distorted, and it's like somebody was sitting and at their computer was like, I'm just going to do this because it's weird or it's different, I'm just going to turn this up and I'm going to do this weird thing, and yeah, and it feels very self-aware, and I think like that really hurts it. So like I told you guys this before, when I listen to music I tend to sing along in my own voice, or maybe in a voice that I want to hear, or maybe I add something else to it. Like I'll hear a melody in the background, and I'll actually take that melody and I'll enhance it and bring it up in volume in my own brain, and like I think, why is this melody so distant? Why is it sound like someone's tuning their guitar at times? Like, you know what I mean? Like, why does it sound like they're trying to write many different songs at once and put them into one song, and it's like, I get it, you're being experimental, I get it, but you're wasting the opportunity for a melody to really shine through. And that was the most frustrating thing about this album, is like I hear so many cool things going on, background noises, and kind of like very spacey floating kind of like choirs and this and that, and it's like in that busyness you failed to really grip that one or two melody that like needs to drive the song, and the song feels like it's almost unable to find a direction because it refuses to choose that melody and like bring it up in volume. It's just so distant and muddy. So yeah, that really hurts it. Vocals too. The vocals, like, I'm not a huge fan of rap music in general, but I've liked rap music in the past. The rapping on this feels very kind of like not interested in really doing much besides kind of just keeping like a certain kind of cadence to it. Yeah, so yeah, the pros: layers, background sound, the choirs, instrumentals are impressive. Like JT was saying, I agree completely. This album is less of a like straightforward listening album, although there are some straightforward listening songs where there's like an obvious chorus, there's an obvious song structure, an obvious beat, like Knots is one of those songs, like it's just a straightforward song. There is no choirs, there is no kind of like a filibustering kind of like, like it's just like it automatically just it just goes straight into it. There's a couple of those kind of tracks, like they just have a straightforward beat, and that's nice that there are some songs like that, and there's some songs that have the background kind of instrumental feel to them, but yeah, it inspires some emotion too, which is a good pro. Yeah, so I'll go to my standout songs. Sorry for Dying, that was as much as it's cliche to like pick the first song on the album, it's one of the few songs that like it doesn't overstay its welcome with the instrumental atmospheric stuff. So like after you hear that instrumental atmospheric stuff in the beginning, when you start hearing it over and over again, and all of it kind of washes out the songs, and it in the beginning you aren't tired of it, but by the time you get mid CD, you're like, I just said CD, God, I'm old. Uh by the time you get to the mid album, you're like, oh my God, like it's just the same kind of like attempt at kind of overwhelming you with this kind of spacey ghost like kind of presence, and in it just kind of loses its staying power. So yeah, like that's so those are my like main songs. Sorry for Dying, Future World, good album. Once again, Future World, I'm sitting there listening to them, like, man, this could be great with a freaking awesome vocal. And I know that's not, it doesn't want to do that. It doesn't want to have someone just cleanly singing, because that would not be progressive, and it's experimental. They need to have somebody who's like, like, I'm not really singing, but I'm kind of singing. Like, no, dude, I want to hear someone freaking singing and like and bringing it. So it's like, I get it. That's what they're going for. So like Kyle was saying, if you're not into that kind of thing, then it can be a problem. So yeah, just to kind of come through. Some of the tracks, don't mind me, was a little bit repetitive, but it's got that straightforward beat, the well-established hook. None of it's really choosing to capitalize on the melody. Same thing with Picking Up Hands. One of my least favorite songs fails to capitalize on the melodies. Most of it plays like someone's fiddling with their guitar, or backing up kind of with the orchestrations, and making little kinds of little sounds and effects, and but the whole thing kind of plays like a community college music project. I hate to say that, but I mean, it kind of reminds me when I was in Dutchess Community College, and someone was submitting their music project to the teacher, and they used sound effects from like the library that they put on the computer. Like, hey, look, it's the sound of someone walking. Oh, hey, look, it's like the sounds of like the stars go, like, cool, congratulations. But like, this is supposed to be a professional album that's like, put out and has like a professionalism to it, and at times it comes off very disjointed and it doesn't flow. Born Yesterday, boring, disjointed mess. Vocals really do nothing for this. 6, The Memories We Lost in Translation, I just doesn't exist to me. It's just not I put it as an NA. It's just an in between to getting to House Settling. That song was actually kind of one of those straightforward songs where it has the hook, but overall it's just overdone by this point with the atmospheric stuff. Knots, that one was like actually pretty cool. It was actually pretty unusual, has some pretty aggressive kind of songwriting on it, and like it's a refreshing song. And then Fantasy World for me was actually really cool. Once again, I'm hearing a different voice. I'm hearing this melody he keeps saying in his voice, and I want to hear someone else sing it. I challenge somebody to take this album and remix it with another singer, and take the music from it, splice it up, take out the melodies that are there, and I want them to put their voice over top of it. I want them to change it. I challenge someone to do this and return to this video, because so many people are watching this. But I challenge somebody to do that, and I will be very interested in it. But yeah, that's just kind of my take on it, and it definitely has a lot going on, but it just doesn't capitalize where it needs to.
That was a lot said there, my guy.
I know. I went long. My bad, guys. My bad.
No, you're. This is why we have you here. No worries. So, any other thoughts on the track listing before we go to our rating and stuff like that, or anything else, or?
No, just that, Mike, I completely agree with you. The vocals are really the main downfall of this. I've never been a fan of his voice even before this, and this kind of just solidified that. I do agree. I would love to see someone else put their vocals over these songs.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm so like, even listening to it just before we did this, I was actually thinking about like, take the most cliche, generic pop artists and put them over top of some of these songs like Ed Sheeran or one of these people. And I'm not a huge fan of those artists, although I have no problem with them. And when I hear a song, I'm like, cool. Like, I'm not like blown away by them, but I've never heard them in a music project that is experimental. So it kind of would be really cool to hear like a pop artist having to kind of use their power for something other than like the run of the mill. So, but my last thing, I wrote this, the whole thing kind of plays like someone listening to a music box while simultaneously listening to their grandma's record player in the far distance. Without any commanding vocals, without any true possession of the melody it presents, it leaves the listener without much to go on. The vocals are the major weakness. And then I said about the last track, oh, how nice. The thing ends with irritating noises like someone dragging the needle on the record player, on their grandma's record player, maybe aliens coming through the window for no reason all of a sudden. And then pretty much, I hate when albums annoy you at the end when you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, it's really pushing my ears to their limits with those noises and everything. And I'm just like, I wish it didn't end on such a kind of, like you said, artsy, oh, we're going to read a poem over top of atmospheric noises. I wish it kind of ended on Fantasy World. Fantasy World would have been a much better ending. It would have been a nice, like, touching kind of like the way he's talking about little elements of his life, the bakery or the this or the that. Like, it's like, I get it. Like, the whole thing about dying, I honestly, you feel like you're at the wake at some point in this, you got the organs, you got the noises, you know what I mean? But yeah, it's just kind of like, that was my last thoughts on it.
All right. I mean, I pretty much said what I have to say personally. So I mean, if you guys are good, we can go over to the rating now, right?
Got it.
JT, why don't you give yours?
So yeah, I was about to say, let me go first. Oh boy. So going into this, by request of Kyle's brother, it does have its highlights, but like we discussed, the vocals do drain it out. I mean, for me, I mean, if you're into, bottom line, if you're into this type of music, I totally recommend, like, if you're into indie, like all that. I am not, because I'm not in that world of like the super low key, let me just put something out like on my own and stuff like that. I don't pay attention to any of that, truthfully. But if I had to, it's hard because there are a couple of tracks on here that I would like, but the question is, would I go back to them a lot? Probably not. And like at randomly, like, hey, I have to listen to that one, like, I have to listen to that one song, "Sorry for Dying." I'm craving to hear that. If I'm craving to, what I mean, like, I don't think I would, but like, I mean, but if I was, though, like, to me, that's when I know a song is good for me. Is like when I'm craving to hear that song again, or that artist again, or that album. That's when I know, for me, that's when I know the song is good. And I didn't really get that with a lot of the songs on here, even though I had the three highlights, the three standout tracks for me personally. I'm gonna say, this is just from my own opinion, I'm gonna give this record a solid 2.5 out of 5. So that's just below a 3. But there were, I mean, no, actually, that's being a little too generous. I'm actually going to 2.35 out of 5. That's a little bit lower than I want it to be. But that's where I'm standing right now, at a 2.35 out of 5 for me for this album. That is where I'm at. So I'm going to give it over to Mike, and then we'll jump back over to Kyle. Mike, what is your rating for this album?
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I would like to just mark it incomplete, in a lot of ways. Like, I feel like it needs it. It would be so cool to see an album just get taken away by a community and broken apart and used for different songs and sampled and kind of improved upon. If anything, it would be like someone created something for that reason. Like, hey, I'm gonna put out some crazy noises, I mean, look at Nine Inch Nails returning back to them. He made it in like CDs full of like almost like stuff that people sampled and different beats and whatever, and like not direct music but indirect, like very kind of whatever. And so yeah, for me, this is like a, it's a 2 out of 5. It's just pretty much we'll put it down as incomplete. And some great ideas buried beneath the attempt at a experimental CD. But being experimental doesn't necessarily give an excuse to kind of really leave everything off the table, so that the person can't really honestly decipher a lot of it in favor of being original. Like, you still have to grab those melodies, and you have to really use them correctly alongside the flow of your music. And for that, I just felt like it just didn't connect there. So yeah, 2 out of 5 for me.
And last but not least, the man who had his brother recommend this to us, Kyle.
All right, yeah, I'm actually a little bit higher than both of you guys. Not much though. For me, it really came down to, like JT said, would I come back to any of these tracks? And for me, surprisingly, yes. The only two that I would find myself going back to relatively frequently would be Knots and Fantasy World. I said enough about them earlier, but those are two that I found myself wanting to actually go back and listen to, which is the first time it's happened with any of his songs, I'm going to be honest. Other than that, though, I'm in pretty much complete agreement here. It's just, it feels experimental for the sake of being experimental. I think he even put out a whole movie to go with this, which, that's cool. Maybe it works better visually. I might give it a shot and see if that works. I'm sure it does. And lyrically and storytelling wise, it does a great job. If you actually look at the lyrics, the story behind it and all that, he gets the point across very well. I think he does a great job with that. If you do so I'll start with my rating. My rating is 2.75 out of 5. It's a light 2.75. Could go down to 2.5, but I'll give it, just because those two songs, I'll push it up there. But if you like this kind of artsy, shoegaze, indie styled, experimental track, sound like this, I would say that, I think Fantano gave it a really positive, really fair score with a 7 out of 10. If you do enjoy this, I think you'll find quite a bit to enjoy on this record. I mean, for me personally, it's not about, I don't vibe with this music very much. It doesn't connect with me on a personal level. So for me, I gotta stick my 2.75 out of 5. And I think that's pretty fair for a majority of people. I don't think it's a sound that the mainstream audience is going to gravitate towards, but I think that it's going to make his fans happy, and fans of this genre, I think, will really enjoy it.
And that's funny you say that, because coming to me for my thoughts on an album that's in this genre is kind of like, it doesn't do it any justice other than for me to complain about the things that they probably are enjoying about it. And that's what's interesting about it, is I'm sure they're well aware of the methods they're using to kind of make this an experimental kind of release. And trust me, I've listened to some experimental music before, and it all has its own kind of process. I mean, I had you listen to Cornelius, Kyle.
You sure
and it is off the wall. It's definitely in the person who's made its head. And I know a lot of people love to be inside someone's head, especially if they agree with all of the things that they're kind of doing. Like, if I loved his last 3 albums, I think this one I'll love. Whereas I haven't listened to any of them, and it just hasn't been, I haven't been in that genre or found any kind of common ground on it. So it's that's, and what Kyle says is true. It's for the genre, this may be a home run. And I'm not knocking the album. I'm knocking, basically what my takeaways need to be in order for me to come away saying, you know what, you didn't sell out to one side or you didn't sell out to the other side. You striked it right down the, you struck down the middle. And that's the problem, is it doesn't strike down the middle. It definitely leans towards the experimental side. And it's like, I would love to hear a future release of his where he says, okay, look, I did my experimental thing. Now let me see if I can kind of turn this, don't go crazy. Like, I don't want you to go all the way to the pop side and just do some generic crap. Like, steer it towards the middle where you do enough where you don't alienate those people listening, like me, Kyle, and JT here. Don't alienate those people, but at the same time, keep your flair, the way you do things, keep it enough so that you kind of create a perfect union between the two, and that balance always shows true maturity to an artist, that they aren't trying to chase this, like, the clout of like being experimental for the sake of being experimental. It's like, you can kind of find common ground with all elements of music and bring it all together. So yeah, I'd love to hear that the future, Qudeca release.
Cool. Any other concluding thoughts before we wrap it up?
I think for me, just that this was an artist that prior to this album, if someone told me he had a new record coming out, I wouldn't even bother listening to it. But I think that after this one, I'd probably check it out just to see where he goes. Because like Mike said, I would love to see him go in a way that merges this with a more accessible, putting the vocals on there more front and center and having those be a focal point instead of the random experimental sounds that take over on a lot of the parts of this. I think could really improve this. If this record had that, it could have been up to like a 3.5, maybe even 4, depending on how well it was done. But it just wasn't there. There were so many points, like Mike said, that was just, wow, you could put like a solid vocal line over this, and he didn't do it. And a lot of times would instead just go for a poetic, like spoken word, or that like very breathy, like vocal, like Mike was talking about. Yeah. So, surprisingly, I would actually check out his next record when he puts it out and see if he decides to go anywhere in new territories with it. If more of the same, we'll see.
Cool. Mike, you got anything else at all, or no?
No, I completely agree with Kyle, and I'm like I said, this has opened the door to like listening to the next CD with like CD with the anticipation that I want to hear what's next. It could get crazier, and then I'll just be like, oh, like I didn't see that coming, and I'm not staying on the train. But if my bets are on that he's definitely understanding that there's a balance to this game, and he's going to find that, or he's just going to stay doing what he does. And that's, either way, it's fine. I would just like to see what Kyle was talking about a little more, playing around with music that's not just all experimental.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to repeat anything, but the three of us are pretty much on the same page here with that, as far as like vocals go and sounds. And truthfully, I will say this too. I would be interested to hear it. Would be interested to hear his next album, to see where he goes, just to come off from here. I mean, just out of curiosity, truthfully. But that's just me. Anything else?
Nope.
All right. Well, that's gonna do it for us here tonight on our career retrospective show. We want to thank you for watching, listening, however you enjoyed us. I can't talk anymore. It's ridiculous. Anyways, I want to thank the two gentlemen for joining me, as always, Mike and Kyle. You guys are great. Thank you so much for, as always, doing this show, and it's always a pleasure doing it. So if you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and we are on Patreon, just saying. And I just want to put that out there for all you out there.
And OnlyFans. No. No, only me. I'm sorry, guys. Check it out.
Mike, you can reach Mike at C at OnlyFans.
Mike C at OnlyFans. Just the Home Depot apron.
Link in description.
Link in description below.
Just the Home Depot apron. I don't know. That's all I'll say. So.
That just made my night.
Yeah, I don't know why. I should have ruined your night, but
It's kind
all
of
right.
that's actually weird. Yeah. We would end the show before anything else happens. But thank you so much for watching, listening. However you guys enjoyed us, stay safe, take care, and see you guys next week for another episode of Career Retrospectives. We'll see you guys later.
Peace.